Hi guys, welcome. Sports and shorts of sorts. My name is Rennie, Ren City. Thanks for coming along. Episode 44. We'll do what we do every episode. We'll jump right into the jersey mentions. Let's do it, yo. Episode 44, Jersey 44, first person you think of. I'm talking about Hammer and Hank Aaron here. His first contract was with the Indianapolis Clowns of the Negro League. Yeah, this is way back. He played there for 3 months, putting up big numbers, experiencing, unfortunately, lots of racism along the way. His contract was purchased by the Milwaukee Braves, where he'd start his legendary MLB career. He'd spend most of his career with the Braves, including their move to Atlanta, where he put up insane numbers. He'd finish off his career back in Milwaukee, but his time with the Brewers franchise, but like I was saying, his numbers were insane. 25-time All-Star. He led the NL in RBIs and home runs 4 different times, batting champion twice in his career, 3 Golden Gloves. Surprisingly, he only won the one World Series in 1957 when the Braves beat the Yankees in 7. And that was also the same year that Hammer and Hank won his only NL MVP. He was inducted in the Hall of Fame, first ballot Hall of Famer. His 44 is retired by the Braves and the Brewers. He's in the Braves Hall of Fame, Brewers Wall of Honor, selected to the MLB All Century team. He holds a few MLB records as well. Most career runs batted in, most career total bases, most career extra base hits. Some say he's the true home run king. You know, he was surpassed Babe Ruth's record and finished with 755, and he held that record for 33 years until Barry Bonds passed him. Bonds finished with 13 more home runs, but you know, there's all the HGH, PED talk during that era. Some feels Bonds should have an asterisk. However you want to look at it, Hank Aaron was a fantastic player, one of the best to play, and unfortunately he passed away in 2021 at the age of 86. But Hammer and Hank, like I said, one of the best. Some people believe he's the best player in their eyes, but you know that's such a subjective thing. Next up, for number 44, another baseball legend, Mr. October. Cool nickname, especially if you're in a calendar, but Reggie Jackson. Reggie Jackson's dad wanted his son to go to college, and Reggie was getting a lot of attention from football schools that play, you know, as well football and baseball. He didn't want to go to any southern schools like Bama, Georgia, or Oklahoma, you know, fear of the South and the racism. Yeah, that was the thing. It still is, but not like it was. And he said he didn't want to go to Oklahoma because the coach told him to stop dating white girls. That's an interesting one. But he'd end up accepting a scholarship at Arizona State. He just played baseball, and the rest is history. He put up huge numbers, which got him drafted second overall by the Kansas City Athletics. He played in the minors before getting called up to the show. The Athletics moved to Oakland that same year. He also wore 9 with the franchise, which is retired. But while with that franchise, he'd be part of those World Series winning teams that won 3 in a row from 72 to 74, winning 1 World Series MVP along the way. He'd play 1 more year in Baltimore before going to the Yankees. And as a Yankee, he'd win 2 more World Series, including the MVP in 1977. During that same World Series, Munson was being interviewed, another Yankee great, and he'd say, well, go ask Mr. October, in reference to the dominance Reggie was showing, and he'd become a free agent and sign a big deal with the California Angels, where he'd play 5 years before finishing his career with 1 more season with the Athletics. Reggie Jackson would make 14 All-Star games. Like I said, 5-time World Series, where 2 of them he won MVP of the World Series. Led the AL in home runs 4 times, RBIs once, AL MVP in 73 with the A's. As mentioned, his 9 is retired with the Athletics. His 44 is retired with the Yankees. He's honored in the Yankees Monument Park, the Athletics Hall of Fame. He's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He got in on the first ballot. And it's wild. He only had 2 losing seasons in his 21 career. A winner through and through. Plus, he had his own chocolate bar for a while, which is kind of cool. Next baseballer up, the Rock 44, Willie McAvoy. He started his career with the Giants and was great right out of the gate, winning Rookie of the Year in 59. He'd make 6 All-Star games and led the NL in home runs on 3 different occasions and in RBIs twice. His best year probably came in 69, where he won NL MVP. He'd go on to play with the Padres and Athletics before returning to the Giants, where he'd finish his career. His 44 is retired by the Giants, and he's on their Wall of Fame. First ballot Hall of Famer as well when he was inducted in '86. Next baller I'll mention, he wore 44 his first 8 years in the league before he was traded. And he's like, you know what? I'm not a guy that demand this, so I'll switch numbers. I'm talking about Paul Goldschmidt. He rocked 44 while playing in Arizona as one of the best first basemen in baseball. Once he was traded to the Cardinals, like I said, he didn't demand the jersey. Someone else had it, so he's number 46 now. But great player, and especially in that 44. He's a 7-time All-Star, 4-time Gold Glove Award, 5 Silver Sluggers. In 2013, he led the NL in home runs and RBIs. And in 2022, while with the Cardinals, he won NL MVP. 36, still playing. I imagine he'll be in the Hall of Fame. He's put up pretty good numbers, but you never know. We're going to jump to the hardwood now, start with the NBA logo. Yeah, Jerry West, he's the logo, Mr. Logo himself. Proud wearer of the number 44, one of the best guards ever to play basketball. He was a beast in college. West Virginia, 2-time All-American mentions. His 44 is retired by the Mountaineers. That would lead him to getting drafted second overall by the Lakers, and they were just moving from Minneapolis to LA, and Jerry West shined out west, making 14 All-Star games. All-Star game MVP in '72, 10 All-NBA first teams and 2 All-NBA second teams. And he did it defensively as well, making 4 All-Defensive first teams and 1 second team. But despite the greatness of Jerry West, he could not get over the hump in the finals, mostly the Boston Celtics. But despite that, he was just amazing. In 1969, he became the only losing player to receive the Finals MVP. He averaged 38 points per game in a loss, and the only other person you could think maybe getting it in a losing effort would be LeBron in that one where he put the team on his back and put up huge numbers in that loss to the Warriors. But yeah, Jerry West, the only one to get that in a losing effort. And in '72, he'd finally get his only title with that dynamic Lakers team. Huge monkey off his back, but still a 1-8 finals record isn't ideal, but regardless, he's one of the best to ever play. And of course, his number 44 is retired by the Lakers. He's in the College Basketball and the Basketball Hall of Fame. He's an amazing executive. He's won 8 titles in that role, twice winning Executive of the Year. You can't talk about basketball without talking about Jerry West. He's made the 35th, 50th, and 75th NBA anniversary teams. He's literally been in the game forever, it seems, but yeah, got to give a shout out to Jerry West, the logo. Yeah, the guy doing that. And that's Jerry West. Next baller up is one of the coolest nicknames ever, Iceman. Talking about Spurs legend George Gervin. He's a beast as a youngster and received a scholarship to play under Jerry Tarkanian at California State. However, it was a culture shock to Gervin. He returned home, transferred to Eastern Michigan, where he averaged almost 30 points per game as a sophomore. Then, while in national semifinal game, Gervin punched an opposing player, leading to him getting suspended the following season, which led to him taking a little bit of a different route. He played in the CBA, and he was spotted by ABA's Virginia Squires, Johnny Kerr, who was like, hey, come join us. They were a broke-ass team, though, so he'd get traded to the Spurs, where he'd do amazing things. He was one of the most exciting players to watch in the ABA. 3-time All-Star in the ABA, and then after the merger, he stuck with the Spurs and joined in the NBA, and his finger roll is legendary. He's known for his finger roll, and you just gotta watch highlights of it. There's a reason he's the finger roll master. It's like something Kyrie Irving does, it's phenomenal. But in the NBA, he'd make 9 All-Star games, winning the All-Star MVP in 1980. 5-time All-NBA first team, 2-time All-NBA second team. He led the NBA in scoring 4 different times. A true bucket getter. Like I said, he's one of 3 players in history to average 30 points per game and shoot 50% on field goals. MJ and Steph Curry are the others. Pretty good company. Iceman would wind up his career overseas, but yeah, he's one of the most iconic players on my favorite NBA team, so I'm always going to give George Gervin love. He made the NBA 50th, 75th anniversary team. His 44 is retired by the Spurs. He's in the College and Basketball Hall of Fame. Next up, Dan Issel. He went to University of Kentucky to play under legendary coach Adolph Rupp. He was a stud at college, second team, first team All-American. After graduation in 70, Isla went in the eighth round. Yeah, that's a lot of rounds by the Detroit Pistons. But he was drafted in the first round by the ABA's Kentucky Colonels. So he chose the latter and he lit it up with the Colonels. In his rookie season, he led the ABA in scoring on the way to winning Rookie of the Year. He'd make 6 ABA All Star games, including winning the MVP in the 72 game. That same year, he'd make his only ABA first team. He'd make 4 ABA second teams. And then while teamed up with Artis Gilmore, they won the 75 ABA championship. Prior to the next season, he was traded to the Baltimore Claws, but before that season would start, he'd get traded to the Denver Nuggets. And then after the merger, yeah, he's in the NBA on the Nuggets. He'd have great seasons, but he was a little past his prime at that point, only getting one NBA All-Star nod. His 44 is retired by the Nuggets, and he's a member of the College and Basketball Hall of Fame. The next 44 up is he had a few numbers. He had 7 in the pros, 23 in college, but he's perhaps one of the best to wear number 44. And that's saying a lot considering some of the names I've mentioned. But I'm talking about Pistol Pete Maravich. His numbers at LSU are actually insane. He led the NCAA in scoring 3 straight years, earning first team All-American all those seasons. That got him his number 23 retired at LSU, and he's the number 1 all-time leading scorer in college basketball history with 3,667 points in 83 games. It's amazing. He lit it up. That would lead him to getting drafted overall by the Hawks, where he'd be a member of the NBA All-Rookie First Team, and he'd make 2 All-Star games as a Hawk, including second NBA All-NBA. But that wouldn't translate to much in the playoffs. And then there's a new expansion team, the New Orleans Jazz. They were trying to generate some buzz, so why not bring the stud from who played at LSU, right? He'd make huge numbers there in Utah, making 3 more All-Star games, 2 All-NBA first-team nods. His 1977 season was probably his best, averaging 31.1 points per game, scoring 40 or more 13 times, 50 or more 4 times, and throw in a 68-point game against the Knicks. It was the most points scored by an NBA guard at that point. The only player that had scored more in a game at that point in history was Wilt Elgin Baylor. So, yeah, that was pretty amazing. But injuries would take what was left of his game, and he couldn't really do what he wanted to. He had to retire. His 44s retired by the Hawks. His 7s retired by the Jazz and the Pelicans. He was inducted to the College and Basketball Hall of Fame, but tragically in 1988, he passed away at the age of 40 playing pickup basketball in Pasadena, California. He just passed out and he died right on the floor there. An autopsy revealed the cause of death to be a rare congenital defect. He was born with a missing left coronary artery, so his right coronary artery was grossly enlarged due to compensating. So yeah, it's brutal that went undetected and he had to pass that way. But a phenomenal career, and a lot of players, their eyes light up talking about Pistol Pete. Cool nickname too. But next up on the court, Paul Westphal. Great college career at USC. Got him drafted 10th overall by the Celtics, 72 draft. He'd spent 3 seasons with the Celtics and was a member of the 74 title-winning team that beat the Bucks in 7. But the Phoenix Suns are really where Westphal would thrive. And Westphal would help guide the Suns to their first ever finals appearance. They'd lose to the Celtics in the finals, though. But as a Sun, he'd make 4 All-Star games, 3-time All-NBA first team, All-NBA second once. When he'd get moved to Seattle, where he'd make his last All-Star appearance. But yeah, injuries really kind of hurt him. After missing most of the 81-82 season, he'd signed with the Knicks, helped them get to the playoffs, winning Comeback Player of the Year that season. But he was pretty much done there. He'd get in the coaching right after his career, and he'd lead his old team, the Suns, to the finals, coaching Charles Barkley. But they'd lose to a guy named Michael Jordan in the finals. But, man, Westphal, heck of a career. His 44 is retired by the Suns. He's in the Ring of Honor. He's in the College and Basketball Hall of Fame. But unfortunately, he was diagnosed with cancer in 2020, and he'd succumb to the disease a few months later at the age of 70. But great player, fantastic coach, and a few other 44s worth mentioning. Sam Lacey, 6'10", big man, made 1 All-Star game. His number 44 is retired by the Sacramento Kings. Although he never played in Sacramento. We played for the franchise when they were Cincinnati and Kansas City, Omaha. and then just Kansas City. Another mention, Derek Coleman, ahead of his time for what he could do as a big man. He could dribble, he could shoot. He's a beast at Syracuse, where his 44 is retired. That led him to getting drafted first overall in the 90-90 draft. He's with the Nets, where he won Rookie of the Year. He'd make 2 All-NBA third teams and 1 All-Star game. And then my last 44 is a current one, Bojan Bogdanovic, a legit scorer on the struggling Pistons. I mean, they did win 1 recently. If you want to hear more NBA stuff, I do have my NBA podcast on my page. Check it out. But yeah, Bojan Bogdanovic, the Croatians bounced around a bit, but he's been a consistent scorer in the league, and he's a vet on that young team where they need it. We'll leave the court. We'll go to the gridiron. First, number 44, a beast running back. I'm talking about John Riggins. In college, he was phenomenal. He broke Gale Sayers, shout out episode number 40, rushing record in college. That would lead him to getting drafted by the Jets. As a rookie, he was a beast, lighting it up with the Jets. And after 4 seasons, he was already the 4th leading rusher in history for the franchise. But he'd become a free agent, and he'd go to Washington, where he got a substantial raise. And yeah, he was just used as a short yardage guy, and he'd miss some time with an injury, but he'd come back and be a bit of a contract dispute. That new coach, Joe Gibbs, would actually have to go out to Kansas to locate Riggins, who was out hunting or fishing, and get him to come back. He said, okay, I'll come back. And he came back, and he lit it up in the playoffs, leading the Washington to a Super Bowl 17 victory over the Dolphins. He had 166 yards on 38 carries, winning MVP. He put up 610 rushing yards in that postseason, which is still a single postseason record today. Riggins would finish his career with Washington. He's in their Ring of Fame. He made only 1 first-team All-Pro and 1 Pro Bowl, but he's considered one of the best running backs of his day, and he's enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The next 44 is probably known more for his coaching than his playing, but he was a dynamic player. I'm talking about Dick LeBeau. He played at Ohio State University. He was a member of the championship-winning team in '57. That got him drafted by the Browns in the 5th round, but he never ended up playing with them. He was cut. He'd get signed by the Detroit Lions, where he'd spend his whole career. At quarterback, he was part of one of the most feared secondaries in the NFL. His 62 interceptions are a Lions record and have him 10th all time in NFL history. That's pretty impressive. He's tied with Dave Brown at that mark. He made 3 Pro Bowls, 3 second-team All-Pros. He's an icon in Detroit, member of the Pride of the Lions, 75th anniversary team, and the Lions all-time team. Like I said, though, most of the people think of him as a coach, a defensive genius. You know, what he did on the defensive side with the Steelers was phenomenal. Part of winning Super Bowls there. Won Coordinator of the Year in 2008. You know, he's in the Pittsburgh Pro Football Hall of Fame, and he's forever enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The next number 44 needs mentioning, Floyd Little, beast at Syracuse University. He ended up choosing that university because it was where first African-American Heisman Trophy winner Ernie Davis went. And he dominated there, putting up huge numbers where they'd retire his 44 at Syracuse. That led to the Broncos taking him in the 67 draft. He'd go from one orange Syracuse to one orange Bronco. He spent his entire career there. All 9 seasons, he was team captain, including as a rookie, putting up huge numbers. He made 5 Pro Bowls, 1 first-team All-Pro, and they love what he did there. His 44 is retired. He's in the Broncos Ring of Fame. He's in the College and Pro Football Hall of Fames. Last NFL player I'll mention, a current one, a DB for the very tough Baltimore Ravens. I'm talking Marlon Humphrey. Great as a youngster, and he'd end up going to play for Nick Saban at Alabama, where he'd win a national championship. Caught the eyes of the Ravens, who took him 16th overall. He's already made 3 Pro Bowls in his young career, 1 first-team All-Pro, and he led the NFL in forced fumbles in 2020. Very important part of the Baltimore Ravens, who have Super Bowl hopes. This jersey's getting a little lengthy here, but we'll wrap it up on the hockey rink. First player I'll mention, Chris Pronger. Yeah, the guy from those betting commercials. Drafted 2nd overall by the Hartford Whalers. Amazing rookie season, earning a spot on the all-rookie team. However, he was one of the players who were involved with off-ice issues, being one of 6 players arrested for a bathroom brawl in Buffalo. Then he was arrested for drunk driving 3 days after the season ended. So they could see the talent, but question the maturity. He was shipped off to St. Louis, in a trade involving Brendan Shanahan, and he kind of seemed to find his way there. He'd become the captain of the franchise, and he was growing into the player everyone thought this 6'6" defenseman would be. He would have a kind of a scary incident his first year as captain, getting hit in the chest with a puck, and it would cause a cardiac arrest. He'd be okay, but it was pretty scary. He'd come back doing his thing for St. Louis, making 5 All-Star games with the team, winning the Norris Trophy in 2000. He also won the Hart Trophy, so for MVP of the league. The Blues were in financial trouble, so Pronger was shipped to the Oilers, and he'd help get the team to the Stanley Cup. They'd lose to the Hurricanes, and then soon after, Pronger would request a trade. It was reported his wife wasn't happy in Edmonton, which if you ever been to Edmonton, well, I mean, Edmonton's not bad. But yeah, he'd go to the Ducks, where he'd go to the finals, and this time he'd win a Stanley Cup, and he'd still have one more stop yet with my Flyers. He'd have some injury issues, but always a great player when he was healthy. His number 44 is retired by St. Louis. Did a lot for Team Canada, winning 2 Olympic gold medals. Inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2015 and named one of the 100 greatest players in history. The next one I'll mention in hockey is the reason why Pronger didn't wear 44 in Philadelphia. I'm talking about Kimmo Timonen. The Finnish defenseman was originally drafted by the Kings, but would get his start with the Predators, where he'd eventually become captain. He was awesome in Nashville. He was traded to the Flyers, where he'd get a huge deal, and he had some great seasons, getting to his first ever Stanley Cup Finals, but they lose to the Blackhawks, and yeah, while he was preparing for the 2014-15 season, he was diagnosed with a blood clot in both of his lungs and his right leg. So that put him out for a while. The Flyers ended up trading with the Blackhawks just kind of as a salary dump, and he'd retire at the end of that season, but just out of a Disney film, the Blackhawks would win the Stanley Cup, and Timonen's last NHL game would be in the finals, where he'd be the second person to hoist the cup above his head. 5-time All-Star, very involved with the Finnish national team, winning an Olympic silver medal and 3 Olympic bronze. He got inducted to the IIHF Hall of Fame. I hope he gets inducted to the Hall of Fame in Toronto as well. We'll see. Another hockey player that rocked 44, Todd Bertuzzi, bruising forward, started his career with the Islanders, but his best years probably came in Vancouver with the Canucks, 2-time All-Star, but probably most remembered for that boneheaded play that caused some serious damage. That game against the Avalanche, Steve Moore had checked Marcus Naslund previously in the game before. This was a rematch. The Canucks were down 8-2 in the third period. Bertuzzi was following Moore, tried to engage a fight. He didn't want a part of it, so he just cracked him in the head, drove him in the ice. Everyone jumped on top of him. There was like a 10-minute pause. He had to get removed by stretcher. Moore was treated for 3 fractured vertebrae in his neck, a concussion, vertebral ligament damage, stretching of the brachial plexus nerves, and face lacerations. Bertuzzi apologized to Moore, his family, the Canucks, his team. The league suspended Bertuzzi indefinitely. He'd missed the rest of the season, the playoffs, and more. It ended up lasting 17 months before Bertuzzi was back, but yeah, as good as a player he was, he'll probably always be remembered for that cheap shot. And a few last shout-outs for hockey. Good defenseman, Sheldon Souray, played with the Devils, Canadiens, Oilers, Stars, and Ducks, making 3 All-Star games. And another good defenseman, Marc-Edouard Vlasic, Mr. Pickles, great nickname. And another guy, Columbus Blue Jacket, Eric Goodbranson. Wow, a lot of good number 44s there. So let's go from that right to the wild NFL. Whew, what a last week of the season we had here. Steelers and Ravens kicked it off Saturday. The Ravens already had their seed locked up, the number 1 seed in the AFC. So they played Tyler Huntley, and it worked out for the Steelers because they needed a win to keep their playoff hopes alive, and that's what they do. The biggest play of the game would be Mason Rudolph hitting Deontay Johnson for a 71-yard touchdown pass. That put the Steelers up, and they never looked back. So they did their part. They would just need luck from some other teams, and we'll get there. The nightcap on Saturday was the Texans and Colts. This was basically a playoff game. You had 2 AFC South teams that if you win, you're in. And if you win, you have a chance at winning the division if things go your way. And this one went back and forth, and it really came down to one play at the end. It was the Colts, they were down, and all they had to do was score, go ahead here. And yeah, they got lucky because after the Texans went ahead, Fairbairn would miss the extra point, so it was a 6 point game with 6 minutes to go. Gardner Minshew would methodically lead his team down the field, and then 4th and 1, they threw a pass. Jonathan Taylor was leading this whole drive. He was on the bench for third string running back Tyler Goodson. And yeah, the play looked all right. It was a kind of a bad throw by Minshew, a little behind, but it hit Goodson right in the hand. But he dropped the ball. So you didn't have Taylor in the game or backup Zach Moss. You had Goodson, who feels awful about that drop because that drop cost them the game. They lost right then and there. Texans would run the clock down and they'd win the game. Texans clinched their playoff spot just like that. You could see the stunned look on the Colts fans, but wow, just a dramatic win. I could not believe how it went down. Texans go back to the playoffs. First time a first-year coach and rookie quarterback combo got into the playoffs since, well, ironically, the 2012 Colts did it with Andrew Luck and Chuck Pagano. But crazy game, crazy ending, leading into what's a crazy Sunday. CJ Stroud became just the fifth rookie in NFL history to throw for 4,000 yards in a season, joining Jameis Winston, Cam Newton, Herbert, and Andrew Luck. But yeah, the biggest game of the weekend, really, the Jaguars Titans, because this had a lot on the line here. The Jaguars, they had to win to win the division and stay in the playoffs. And the Titans were looking to play spoilers here, and perhaps Derrick Henry's last game as a Titan. Derrick Henry would bust one out from 18 yards to give the Titans the lead, and Jaguars would look to answer, but they wouldn't quite get there. Pass would get intercepted, and the Titans would go right down the field, and Spears would get his second touchdown of the game. And every time that the Jags looked to come back, something would happen. But they'd get within 8. They'd get their chance. It would come down to 4th down. But again, the Titans would stop the Jaguars, eliminating them from the playoffs. This is crazy. The Jaguars went into this game leading the division, needing the win, and you're in, but they lost the game. And with the Steelers winning their game, the Steelers end up squeezing into the playoffs. The Ravens rested their players, and the Steelers got their win. And the Titans, with nothing else to play for but a spoiler trophy, beat the Jaguars, ending their season right there. That's tough. Lawrence was injured, but he still stuck it out. But what a win for the Titans. After the game, Derrick Henry addressed the crowd, thanking them for 8 years, which is usually a pretty good indicator the guy's leaving. But wow, disappointment for Jacksonville. They started the season so well and to end it like that. Yikes. The next game I'll jump to here, Vikings Lions. The Lions were playing a lot of guys here. They were hoping to get that number 2 seed in the NFC East, or in the NFC. They need to win and get some help. And yeah, they'd make some history when Jared Goff would find Sam Laporta in the end zone. Laporta, with his catch past Keith Jackson for rookie receiving record for a tight end. But that would later come to bite them in the ass. Laporta would injure his knee and have to get carted to the locker room. He was ruled out, and after the game, it was announced he's going to miss some time with that knee injury. That's not what you want as going into the playoffs. But yeah, this game would somehow go back and forth. Nick Mullins would have a few deep plays. One on 4th and 1, they decided to chuck it deep, and Mullins would connect with Justin Jefferson. But then Goff would hit Amon-Ra St. Brown on a 70-yard touchdown. For Mullins would hit Addison to make it a 7-point game again. The Lions would waste some time, kick a field goal. It was a 2-possession game. They had it lockdown, sorry, but yeah, they get the win, but big loss in Sam Laporta. That's really gonna hurt them in the playoffs. But like I said, they are in the playoffs. Tough season for the Vikings. That Kirk Cousins injury really kind of derailed their season as they kind of had a rotating seat at quarterback. Falcons Saints, this one was big. The winner would have a chance to make it to the playoffs, and Man, the Falcons look good. They started this off. Desmond Ritter looked like he was playing for his job, hitting Jonas Smith early for a touchdown. Derek Carr would hit A.T. Perry would answer, but then Ritter would hit Bijan Robinson out of the backfield who would go 71 yards. But then the Saints would answer with Keandre Miller who was filling in for Alvin Kamara. He'd score a touchdown. And you're like, wow, what a game. Back and forth, 17-17 at half. But then there'd be a crazy catch by Chris Olave to start the second half. He had no business making it, but he'd tip it to himself, make the catch. Derek Carr would throw a dart to Rashid Shaheed, giving the Saints a big lead. And yeah, as time was getting late in the game, the Saints were up big, and it looked like they were going to just kneel it down after a Honey Badger interception got them to the one. But out of the victory formation, backup Jameis Winston was in the game, handed it off to Jamal Williams, who scored a touchdown, his only one of the season. And after the game, during the handshake, Arthur Smith was going to Dennis Allen, like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing this? And yeah, Allen said, well, the team asked for Williams to get his touchdown, and he said no, let's kneel it out. But Jameis Winston made the educated team decision and said, fuck it, we're doing it. And that pissed Arthur Smith off. I think he was just frustrated because he was knowing what was coming, and it was announced after the game that Arthur Smith was let go as head coach of the Falcons. So not the way they wanted the season to end. The team looks really good on paper, but yeah, they really struggled all season. But the Saints kept their slim playoff hopes alive. They would need a Green Bay and Seattle loss to keep their playoff hopes alive. But we'll go to the other game here, Jets and Patriots. This looked like something out of a football movie, the winter aspect. It was pretty brutal. It was mostly a field goal game. It was 6-3 at halftime with Zerline 2 field goals to Chad Ryland's 1. He had one to end the half, but it doinked. You couldn't even see it doink, but you heard it. You knew it doinked, but you couldn't see the doink. The Jets would add another field goal in the fourth quarter, and they'd literally ice the game when Breece Hall would bust a 50-yard touchdown run to rub it in their division foes' faces, giving the Jets the win. I guess a feel good on a bad season. They ended a 15-game losing streak against the Patriots, and what can I say about the Patriots? Brutal, brutal season. What's Robert Kraft gonna do with Belichick? Is this the end of Bill Belichick in New England? We'll see. We'll find out right away, I guess. Buccaneers, Panthers, the Bucks had the win and win the division, and yeah, it looked like the Panthers were going to score on Bryce Young, hit DJ Shark, but as he extended the ball to the end zone, he fumbled it into the end zone where the Bucks recovered, and the Bucks really couldn't do anything in this game. They would put it literally on the foot of Chase McLaughlin, who would hit 3 field goals, and that'd be enough to give them the 9-0 win. That's how they clinched that brutal NFC South division by beating the Panthers 9-0. Pretty good for Baker Mayfield to win the division with the Bucks after getting cut last year by the Panthers. So kind of full circle for him. Good for the Buccaneers going back to the playoffs. And Panthers, the worst record in the NFL. At least you get never mind, the first overall draft pick. They traded to Chicago and that part of moving up for Bryce Young. So good for Chicago there, I guess. Browns and Bengals. You had the Browns already secured a playoff spot, so Joe Flacco would get the day off. Jeff Driscoll would start at QB, and first throw of the game would get intercepted. Jake Browning would throw an interception back, but that was really the only bad part of Jake Browning's game. This was all Bengals all the way. Joe Mixon was lighting it up. Good thing fantasy season was over for anybody having Mixon. He was on fire. Browning would hit Andre Iosivas for 2 touchdowns in the end zone. This was super one-sided. The Browns got 2 late touchdowns. Driscoll would find David Bell on 2 different occasions to help his resume, but it was a 31-14 beatdown. And there was some history made here. The Bengals, with their win, put every team in the AFC North was over 500. First time in 88 years this has happened, but unfortunately the Bengals are the only team in that division not to make the playoffs, so rough go for them. A lot of eyes were on the Bears-Packers game in the afternoon. A lot of teams were hoping the Packers would lose. The Bears opening the scoring with field goal, and after the Packers missed their field goal, you're getting a little sweaty. I was, but Jordan Love threw off his back foot, which he seems to do just as good as anyone in the league, and found Dontavian Wicks for the touchdown. After the Bears answered with another field goal, Love would find Wicks in the second half for another touchdown. No, there'd be some exchange field goals, but that'd be it. Packers win, and they were in. They won. They're in the playoffs. So pumped. This is Jordan Love's first year starting at quarterback. I had some doubts early on. My patience was wearing thin, but hey, we've made it. The average age of this team, 25.13 years old. The youngest team ever to make the playoffs. I don't have a Love jersey yet, but I had to wear the Packers jersey because we in the playoffs. Playoffs. But yeah, playoffs. Cowboys Commanders. The Cowboys were hoping to win and take the division, and they beat up on the Commanders here. This one wasn't really close. Dak was looking good, hitting CeeDee Lamb for some touchdown, hitting Brandon Cooks. And like they said during the broadcast, when Dak's sharing it like this and this offense is clicking, yeah, there's not a lot you can do. Sam Howell would find Brian Robinson for the Commanders' only touchdown. But like I said, this was all Cowboys. They win the division. And yeah, NFC East crowns your Dallas Cowboys as they take the number 2 seed in the conference. Broncos Raiders, there was no playoff implications involved in this one at all. You had the Jared Stidham showdown with Aiden O'Connell, and I must say the Raiders, Aiden O'Connell, I think he's their guy going forward. But more importantly, Antonio Pierce, come on, Mark Davis, keep Antonio Pierce. There's already talk he's looking at other coaches, but this is what happened last time. They had a good interim coach, and they got rid of him for some splashy hire, which he just ended up paying out after you fire them. Keep Antonio Pierce. It seems like the players want him to stay. Let's see what happens, though. We'll see if ownership listens to the player in this instance. But I think the Raiders have a lot to look forward to going in the next season. While the Broncos, they'll be looking to get rid of Russell Wilson, and we'll see who they'll be wanting to bring in. This is Peyton's team, and he wants the full reins of the Broncos, and we'll see what happens next season with them. Eagles and Giants. The Eagles were coming in with a slight chance to get the NFC East crown. I kind of spoiled it saying the Cowboys had it there, but Eagles look rusty. Hurts didn't look very good. He hurt his finger. His finger looked mangled at one point. They had to kind of pop it back in there, but Marcus Mariota win after the Giants were up big. They had 3 touchdowns in the second quarter. 2 of them Saquon Barkley touchdown rushes, and 1 Tyrod Taylor passed the Darius Slayton. So it was ugly. Like, it's nice for the Giants because they've been on the other end of this most of the season. It's been a tough year for them, but the Eagles, this is not how you want to go into the playoffs. Limping with bad wings for sure. I don't know. You can't be very confident about this Eagles team. Like, they've looked pretty bad, but they're in the playoffs. They'll have some rest here for a week, I guess. We'll see what can happen, but yeah, a lot of questions going regarding this team. And with the Giants, I don't know. You got Danny Dimes under contract for all that money with his torn ACL. Tyrod Taylor looked good at points, but are you just sticking with Danny? I guess you gave him all that money. Saquon Barkley, you didn't pay him, and he probably looked like the best player all the year. So we'll see what the Giants do. They got a tough season ahead. Seahawks were coming in. They needed that Packers loss, so we already know that they didn't make it. Sorry, Seahawks fans. But this was a good game. You know, it was back and forth. The Cardinals were doing their thing. It was pretty wild how the Cardinals would go ahead in this game. It looked like they were going to kick the field goal, and then they're like, hold up, fake field goal. The punter and kicker were out on the wing. They're on the outside as receiver. And then, yeah, Kyler went under snap, threw a pass, touchdown, and you're like, wow, I think they got this. But, you know, Geno Smith would lead the Seahawks down the field, hit Tyler Lockett for a touchdown pass, and then, fuck it, they went for 2, got the 1-point lead, and looked like Seattle had it. And Arizona would get down the field with a chance with Prater to hit a field goal and steal the game, but they'd miss. And Seahawks would take the 1-point win. But with the Packers beating the Bears, Seattle misses out on the postseason. Tough go for Seattle. It's kind of a rough season for them, very up and down. Will Pete Carroll come back next year? It sounds like he's saying he's coming back. Will the team go in a different direction? What are they going to do with Geno Smith? So I don't know. A lot of questions with Seattle because there's some good players there. They look like a really good team. They just did not live up to expectations this year. And Arizona, they had a terrible start, but I think a lot of positives after that bad start. And with Kyler Murray being healthy going into next season, I don't know. I think Jonathan Gannon's got to feel pretty good about this team going into next year. Then you had the Rams and 49ers. Both teams already had their playoff spots clinched. And you get to see some backup quarterbacks. 2018 third overall pick, Sam Darnold, started for the 49ers, while the Rams started 2016 second overall pick, Carson Wentz. The Niners looked good on the opening drive. Elijah Mitchell was getting a lot of touches with Christian McCaffrey sitting it out, and he'd punch in a touchdown from 1 yard out. Rams would answer right away when Wentz would lead a quick drive before capping it off by hitting Puka Nacua for a touchdown. And with the game tied at 7, Sam Darnold would punch it in, and before halftime, Sam Darnold would find Ronnie Bell for a touchdown. Then the third quarter, Carson Wentz would respond by finding Tyler Johnson for an amazing catch in the end zone. They had to check it. And then late in the fourth quarter, Carson Wentz would run one in, and aggressiveness was in the air. I mean, the fate was already decided for these teams, so they went for 2 on the play, and Wentz would find Tutu Atwell, giving them a 1-point lead, and that's how the game would end. Big win for the Rams. So good showing for the backup quarterbacks. It sets up a pretty good matchup coming up, the Matthew Stafford Bowl. We'll get more into our matchups here, but some big history made that day. Puka Nacua passed Dolphins' Jalen Waddle for most receptions by a rookie with 105. He broke the long-standing rookie receiving yards record by former Houston Oiler Bill Groman. So congrats to Nacua getting both of those records. Chief Chargers, this was much like the game I just mentioned. We had some backup quarterbacks. Easton Stick filling in for the injured Justin Herbert, and the Chiefs were resting Patrick Mahomes, so Blaine Gabbert got the star. There's no Travis Kelce in this one either. The only touchdown of the game was when it looked like the Chargers were going to score, and Easton Stick fumbled it. Mike Edwards scooped the ball up, returning it to pay dirt for a touchdown. Then it was a field goal battle. Butker would get the last one with 49 seconds left, and that was the game. Chiefs win the division. One of the coolest scenes of the game was Chiefs interior lineman Chris Jones getting a sack, which triggered a $1.25 million incentive. So, yeah, I guess he'll be buying lunch for the team coming up here. But, yeah, for the Chargers, it was a rough go. Key injuries, the key players, especially Herbert. Staley was already fired earlier in the year. We'll see which coaching splash they make, and they have some older players. We'll see if they'll go more younger direction or they'll stick it out with these older guys one more year with a new coach. I mean, they do have some talent there. We'll see what they got to do, but there's a lot of holes they got to fill. The Sunday night game, this was a big one. AFC East on the line, Bills Dolphins. The Jaguars losing earlier took a little bit of luster out because you knew the Bills were in the playoffs, so they didn't have to fear losing and missing out. But there was still a lot going on, as the winner would take the AFC East, and the Dolphins would start when Devon Achane would run one in 25 yards out. He's so fast. And once Josh Allen was done throwing interceptions, he threw a ball at Van Ginkel's head, which popped straight up in the air, and Trent Sherfield made an insane catch with the feet down, jaw-dropping if you saw McDaniels. And then just for halftime, Tua would find Tyreek for a touchdown. Dolphins led at the break. The Bills were struggling for another touchdown. They'd be getting the ball back on a punt, and Deontay Hardy would inspire the team. 96-yard punt return touchdown, tying the game up. Then midway through the fourth, Josh Allen would find Dawson Knox, putting the Bills ahead. And then they had a chance to ice the game on a 4th and 1. They'd go for a little push, but they would get stopped. Allen would come up short, and the Dolphins would have a chance to tie it. Tua would move the ball down the field. He'd throw a high one up for Tyreek Hill, but Taylor Rapp would make a huge play knocking it down, and Hill would hobble off to the sideline, which was big because a few plays later, Tua would throw the game-ending interception by who else? Taylor Rapp. So huge game-clinching plays by the Bills, but like I said, massive win for Buffalo as they take the AFC East division crown, moving to the number 2 seed in the AFC, and they get to host the game. So after that wild week, our playoff bracket's set on Saturday. We have 2 AFC matches. Cleveland Browns visit Houston to take on the Texans. The night game will be the Tyreek Hill Bowl. Hill and his Miami Dolphins return to his old stomping grounds at Arrowhead to take on the Kansas City Chiefs, who will have Patrick Mahomes playing. On Sunday, you have a triple header. The games open up with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I still don't know how made the playoffs, will be visiting the Buffalo Bills, followed by my Green Bay Packers going into Dallas to take on the Cowboys. I mean, that's going to be a tough game. I'm not going to lie, but there's some history there. You know, Mike McCarthy taking on his former team in Green Bay and taking on the guy who replaced him. The Sunday night cap is the Matthew Stafford Bowl I mentioned earlier. Is the Rams going to Detroit to take on the very playoff hungry Lions. And then the Monday night game, there's a Monday night game featuring the very struggling Philadelphia Eagles going into Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. That should be an intriguing matchup. 49ers and Ravens, like I said, they're both number one seeds in the conference, and they get a first round bye. Today's known as Black Monday in the NFL, the first day after the regular season, where a lot of coaches lose their job. So by the time this is recorded and uploaded, there could be more. But before today, there were 3 coaches that are already fired during the season. The Raiders let go of Josh McDaniels, Frank Reich in the Panthers, and Brandon Staley in the Chargers. Like I alluded to earlier, Arthur Smith of the Falcons has been let go. They're keeping the GM, but a lot of questions on what they're going to do there, especially at quarterback. Washington, it sounded like Ron Rivera might get canned here. Big question marks in New England. Is Bill Belichick gone? Are they going to let him go on his own terms? Is he going to get fired? I don't know. Like I said, questions in the Seattle. Pete Carroll thinks he's coming back. Will Seattle bring him back? Do the Raiders stick with Antonio Pierce? I really hope so. There's talk that Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh will leave Michigan after the championship game and make a jump back to the NFL. A lot of teams want him, so we'll see who splashes out for him. Hate to speculate about people losing their jobs, but that's Black Monday in the NFL. NCAA football championship game, I mentioned Jim Harbaugh. His Michigan team will be taking on Washington today in the title game. The Huskies beat Texas to get to this point, while the Wolverines beat Alabama. Should be a great game. No SEC teams involved here. Like, fantastic final matchup. I think Michigan pulls it off. I don't want to doubt Washington because every time someone does, they win, but yeah, I'm going to go with Michigan in this one. And yeah, we'll see if the Chargers pick off Harbaugh. Because I figure after he wins his championship, he's leaving Michigan. And he's going to go to the Chargers. Unless wild card, he goes to New England. We'll see. Only time will tell. Quick shout out to one of the biggest hockey tournaments in the world, at least in Canada. The World Juniors were going on in Sweden. We'll quickly roll through the knockout stages. In the quarterfinals, Finland beat Slovakia in OT. Canada was facing Czechia, and then with 11 seconds to go in the third period, Czechia would score, and they'd sneak into the semifinals, stunning Canada, knocking them out at that stage. USA would crush Latvia 7-2, and Sweden would need overtime and a power play goal in overtime to beat Switzerland. Semis were intense games. Sweden would have a huge third period with 3 unanswered goals to beat Czechia. And the USA would down Finland with a comeback win, winning 3-2, setting up a Sweden-USA final. USA would open the scoring in that one. Sweden would respond. Then 2 Isaac Howard goals in the second period. It opened it up. Sweden would get one back, but in the third, US took over, winning 6-2 on Swedish soil to win the gold medal. So congrats to US there. Some footy chat here in the Premier League. We just had a wrap-up for match day 20, and that was West Ham and Brighton. They were at the last game left, and that was a scoreless draw. Brighton should have probably won, but as a West Ham fan, I would gladly take that point. During the midweek, there was some Spanish top-flight footy going on down, and you had a big match between Getafe and Rayo Vallecano. 2 early yellow cards had Getafe's Latasa thrown out of the game, and that would really change the game. Camelo would score on literally the last kick of the first half, and then he'd score early in the second half. Former Man U player Mason Greenwood would given a straight card for dissent. He said fuck sakes to his players, but the ref thought he said fuck you to the ref. So regardless, he was dismissed. Getafe would get another red card, finish with 8 players as they lost 2-0. The tough one there. There was a big home win for Valencia. They beat Villarreal 3-1. Granada, Osasuna, and Athletic Bilbao all picked up wins. Real Madrid dominated their entire game, but needed a second half header by Rudiger to get the win over Mallorca. Alaves looked very poised to upset Real Sociedad, especially after Sociedad keeper really misread the ball outside the box and had to play it with his hand, otherwise he was going to get scored on. So that's a straight red, and they'd go down to 10 men, and it looked like they had it until the 6 minute of stoppage time. Zubamendi would score and secure the point for Sociedad. The Alaves players looked very frustrated with that. They thought they had it won. Barcelona would go down a goal to Las Palmas 12 minutes in, but Ferran Torres would equalize in the second half, and then they'd look to get the winner, but Sinkgraven would have to get a goal-saving move in the box, which is a red card, and Gundogan would step up and score from the spot, giving Barcelona the dramatic victory they had no business winning there. Most anticipated game of the week was two teams in the top four, Girona hosting Atletico Madrid. This game lived up to the hype. Girona would score not even 2 minutes into the game, but Alvaro Morata would answer for Atletico. And Girona would get 2 goals in 13 minutes, leading 3-1. With just before halftime, Morata would get a second. It'd be 3-2. Then not even 10 minutes in the second half, Morata would get his hat trick, and the game would be tied at 3. We looked like we were going to have a draw. And in stoppage time, Ivan Martin would get the ball in traffic, make a little move, scoop the ball in the corner. It was really nice, giving Girona the dramatic home win and prolonging their amazing season here. So after 19 games, which is literally the halfway point, because, 20 teams, you play each team twice, 19 teams twice, 38. So anyway, halfway through the season, we've got a pretty good look at the table. Real Madrid and Girona, yeah, still up there, tied on points atop the league. Real Madrid's goal difference has them in first. Last year's champs, Barcelona, sit alone in third. Athletic Bilbao and Madrid are tied on points in fourth, but Bilbao have a slightly better goal difference. Coppa Italia, there's some domestic cups going on midweek, and in Italy, we had some fixtures in the round of 16. AC Milan would pound Cagliari 4-1. Atalanta beat up on Sassuolo. Roma was in a close one against Serie B side Cremonese and would need a comeback to come down from a goal back to win 2-1. Juventus would annihilate Salernitana 6-1, so this sets up the quarterfinals, which will be going on this week during the week. So on Tuesday, you have Fiorentina facing Bologna. Wednesday, you have Lazio and Roma, and AC Milan and Atalanta. Those are some big matchups. Then Thursday, you have Juventus taking on Frosinone. The French Cups, sticking with the Coupe de France, some more domestic cups. There was some round of 64 play. Some top level teams that went on were Nantes, Clermont-Foot, Brestois, Montpellier, Nice, Lyon, Le Havre, Rennes, Strasbourg, Marseille, Reims, Toulouse, and of course PSG. They won 9-0 in their game. Some surprises included Ligue 1 side Lorient losing to National. It's a Div 3 French side, so that's a big loss for them. Lille Dispatch, Martinique side, who were in this tournament, they beat them 12-0. Jonathan David scored a hat trick in that one. And then there was a match featuring two Ligue 1 sides that went to penalties, and Lens hosted Monaco, and Monaco would win in penalties to go on to the next round. There was no Premier League matches, but you had some FA Cup, just like other leagues, and they were in the third round of the FA Cup. Some Premier League teams advancing. Fulham, Tottenham beat Burnley to advance. Newcastle, Brighton, Sheffield United, Bournemouth, Chelsea, Aston Villa, and Man City all advanced. The biggest match of the round was probably Arsenal hosting Liverpool. This game stayed goalless until the 80th minute. Liverpool had a dangerous free kick into the box by Trent Alexander-Arnold, and it was headed into their own net by Jacob Chiori. The Arsenal defender, that one goal really set them back, and Arsenal would look to equalize but leave themselves open for a Luis Diaz second Liverpool goal, clinching the game and advancing Liverpool to the next round. There are a few teams that drew, and now they'll require a replay in a few weeks. Everton and Palace, Brentford Wolves, Newport Country and Eastleigh, Norwich City and Bristol Rovers, Hull City, Birmingham, West Ham, Bristol City, Nottingham Forest, Blackpool and Luton Town versus Bolton. Man U and Wigan they'll be playing today, and that'll be the last game of the round. Copa del Rey, you had some Spanish domestic cup going down the round of 32. Some sides moving on: Atletico Madrid, Getafe, Girona, Rayo Vallecano, Real Madrid, Celta Vigo, Mallorca, Sevilla, Osasuna, Athletic Bilbao, and Real Sociedad. Some sides that were knocked out were Real Betis, who lost to Alaves, and an even bigger surprise, Las Palmas was knocked out by second division side Tenerife. Tenerife, not a very good look for them. Rough week for Las Palmas. Valencia needed extra time to escape with a 2-1 win over last place second division club FC Cartagena. Barcelona barely held on for a 3-2 win over lower tiered Barbastro. And a very strange scene between Union Stas and Villarreal. This one was 1-1 heading to extra time. However, there was an electrical issue and the power went out. And after almost an hour, they just said, you know what, we're going to suspend the game. And this is pretty big because they can't have a draw for the next round games until this concludes. So today, at some point, this game will go down, and then after they have the winner, they'll decide the draw for the next round. But there was actual some league play this weekend in Italy, the Serie A. It took place, in Italy, I guess. Bologna and Genoa would kick things off with a draw. Other 1-1 draws would be between Lecce and Cagliari. Roma equalized with Atalanta to finish the same. Frosinone hosted Monza, and that was a wild match where Frosinone was down 3-0. They'd come back, but it would come up short as they lost 3-2. AC Milan would beat up on Empoli 3-0. Sassuolo surprised Fiorentina with a 1-0 win. Inter Milan was in a dramatic game with Verona. A stoppage time goal put Inter ahead, but they give up a penalty just minutes later, and Henry would step up for a chance of getting his second goal of the game, but he'd hit the post, and Inter would hold on the win 2-1. And then there was big news and transfer news with Inter Milan as Canadian star Tejan Buchanan signed with the Italian club. Massive move for Canadian footy, and his introduction video made him look like he was bred in a lab like Wolverine. I guess that's how we're viewed as Canadians. But anyway, great signing for him. I hope he does some good damage in the Serie A. Lazio would get a second half winner from Vicino to give them a 2-1 win over Udinese. Torino thumped last year's champions Napoli 3-0 in a game that was never close. Juventus would go a goal down to Salernitana, that they'd come back to win that game after goal scorer Maggiore would get a red card in the second half, and that would kickstart Juventus's comeback. So after 19 matches, again the halfway point in Serie A, Inter Milan lead the Serie A just 2 points ahead of Juventus. Third spot is by AC Milan, and fourth spot's held by Fiorentina. Last year's champs Napoli sit all the way back in ninth spot. Yikes. Some NHL news. Great hockey being played out west. Few teams on some lengthy winning streaks. The Oilers, because I watched them dismantle my Flyers this past week, and it was a great excuse to watch some more Connor McDavid, and what he does is amazing. His no-look assist on their way to beating the Flyers 5-2 was something else. Like I said, 7-game winning streak, and they're moving up the standings. The team that's kind of been joining them on their ascension, the Seattle Kraken, winners of 6 in a row. They've been playing some good hockey, kicking some ass and taking some names. But the Winnipeg Jets, man, winners of 6 in a row, sole leaders of the Central Division, leaving the Avalanche and Stars in the dust. They're playing some really good hockey right now. Kings, not so much. They're slumping a bit, losers of 5 in a row, but they're not as bad as the Sharks, losers of 11 in a row with no sign of winning in sight. Out east, the hottest team going, Florida Panthers, winners of 7 in a row, nipping at the heels of the Boston Bruins in the conference. They beat the Rangers on this streak. They won back-to-back games over the Knights and Avalanche. Pretty one-sided, too. Matthew Tkachuk has his team playing the right way. The Maple Leafs seem to be rocking Martin Jones in between the pipes, and so far it's looking okay. Winners of their last 3. Lots of uncertainty regarding that position, but maybe Jonesy's the answer here. We'll see going forward. The Red Wings, they got a little 3-game winning streak of their own going, so good on them. Some Buzz Killington news in the NHL with number 1 overall pick Connor Bedard's injury. He was hit by New Jersey Devil Brendan Smith, left the ice right away, and then it was announced the 18-year-old suffered a fractured jaw. Blackhawks have him on injured reserve. Coach Luke Richardson said he's not sure on the timeline, so brutal to hear as he's leading the rookies in points and goals, which I'll get to more of in a bit here. More injury news. We'll go to Montreal. Christian Dvorak will miss the rest of the season with a torn pectoral muscle. Not a fun one by any means, but crunching the numbers. Current points leader, Tampa Bay Lightning forward Nikita Kucherov, he still leads with 67 points. Colorado's Nathan McKinnon just a few behind him. Austin Matthews of the Maple Leafs still leading the league in goals with 30. Kucherov and Florida's Sam Reinhart just behind him at 28. Aiden Hill still has those nice stats, but he's missed a lot of time, so we can't have him at the stat leaders. So next up in goals against average and save percentage, LA's Cam Talbot, despite their recent struggles. Colorado's Alexander Georgiev leads the league in wins. Like I said, Bedard leads rookies in points and goals, but this is going to open the door for Minnesota's Marco Rossi and Columbus's Adam Fantilli to pass him in those categories. But we'll see what happens. Lots of good hockey. Quick baseball, Tampa Bay Rays shortstop Orlando Franco. We know he was involved with some minors here, and he was detained in the Dominican Republic. We'll see what happens with him there. The Atlanta Braves picked up Chris Sale in a trade with the Red Sox and signed him to a 2-year deal. The Giants didn't want to be quiet any longer. They acquired former Cy Young winner Robbie Ray from the Mariners. And the rich continue to get richer as the Dodgers signed outfielder Teoscar Hernandez. So when will the Dodgers stop? But that's the sports. Let's jump to a quick short here. Watching the Jets-Patriots game and then seeing all the snow we finally got here. Thanks to everyone wishing for snow, by the way, as we're spinning around on the icy roads singing, "You're welcome." But it got me thinking about some shitty ice driving I've been through from the moments actually driving on the ice, where luckily they were incident-free, were like the ice roads when me and the family were moving from Yellowknife to Edmonton. Such a weird experience. My mom driving on the ice. She usually panics in those situations, so I didn't let her know we were on the ice road, but halfway through, you could hear the cracking, and she's like, "Oh my God," kind of freaking a bit. I'm like, "We're good. Don't worry about it." She kept trying to get closer to my dad in the U-Haul. I'm like, no, we don't want to be right behind a vehicle. You want to keep your distance, which kind of prepped me for ice fishing, because when you're out there with the boys, or you hear the ice cracking, or when people drive by and you hear that weird noise, and it's definitely surreal, but when you're driving onto the ice and you got your seatbelts off and your windows open, because you never know. Safety first. And then there's other situations on ice that don't involve open water. Just driving on the highways here, like going from Warman to Saskatoon with my mom in her minivan. The van spins, and you're suddenly going backwards into the ditch. And you just have to kind of collect yourself. And then drive out, and hopefully you can go out on your tracks, which you could in this situation. Or, there's other instances where you hit the ditch and you can't drive out, and you gotta either shovel it out or call a tow truck, worst case Ontario, but it's good for the tow truck people this time of the year. But one of my worst ones, it's not one I'm not proud about by any means, because I had a few Chardonnays and decided to drive home, which is the worst thing. But this night I guess I drove perfectly home in this winter driving, and then I realized, I don't want to take this road, not the service road. So I just went to turn around, and instead of turning around, just drove it right into the ditch. So I made it all the way home just to drive it into the ditch, turning around. Hurt my pride. Hurts me now thinking the embarrassment of driving under that influence. But hey, lesson learned. And so hey, you got some sports show talk here. You got some winter driving lessons, I guess. But speed is not your friend on the ice, people. But hey, this was episode 44. We got it in the books. Thanks for coming along, Sports and Shorts of Sorts. My name's Ren City. Thanks for coming, guys. Ren City out.